bridges on 19092.
Why you even rapping if you ain't got nothing left to say? I'm biting off relapsing, but I'm clapping at you anyway. I can feel my fingers, I can't feel my legs, hot or cold. I just sobered up and I stumbled on a pot of gold. Bury my face on a gray day, fall back. I've been on the clock while you waiting for the call back. Damn, this shit reminds me of the days when I would try to make it. Your career is overrated, as I have just demonstrated. Things are looking gravy, man, oh my God, what it do? I've been feeling better while you puking on the ones and twos. Hopping on this thing just seemed like it would be fun to do. I've been burning bridges since 1992. Since 1992. I've been burning bridges since 1992.
Since 1992, I've been burning bridges.
What the fuck you want to do?
Was running from the boys in blue. I almost lost my family too. I needed coke, I needed brew. I paid for one, I needed two. Ain't blaming me, I'm blaming you. I blame that dude right next to you. Looked in the mirror, I'm blaming who? Dopey Nation, all like ooh. Dopey Dave, my favorite Jew. Dopey Zoom, I met my crew. Needed to know, I thought I knew. Needed to grow, I fucking grew. Needed to flow, I met these two. All these haters watch me bloom from irritable to spiritual. But I ain't trying to have no beers with you. You know I had to switch gears on you. You in the bathroom stall of that micro brew. You ain't about to fog up my clear view. Ain't trying to fight, so I just flew. You thought I'd bite, but I put up two. All recovery's what I've been up to. And I've been burning bridges since 1992. Since 1992, I've been burning bridges.
Okay, so I can just tell you that we will probably be interrupted by pets, possibly kids. I can hear people talking outside. I wish they would shut the fuck up. Just kidding. It's most of my family. And what else? It's 10 o'clock in the morning here. So I had to set an alarm to make sure I was trying to coordinate the time change, but let's see. Oh, hold on. I'll show you Buster before we get started. Oh, Buster. Where's Buster the dog? So I'll probably talk. I don't know how long I'm going to talk for, but I'll just kind of go with it. So I have a lot of things on my mind this past week, and I'm trying to phase some of them out just because this past week was overdose awareness week. And so that brought up a lot of different kind of things for me. And so I'll cover some of that territory, but just to tell a little bit about myself. So I'm from rural Ohio. And, what was my life like growing up there? It was a lot of being outside and looking for salamanders and snakes and playing in the creek, but also alcoholism and my sister getting into drugs really early and people giving me weed and alcohol when I was really young, before I was 8 years old, and my sister robbing the neighbor's house. It was, it was a lot of ups and downs being there. And I think one of the sort of disadvantages of growing up in a small area was that literally everybody knew your business. There was just no way to hide it. It was just such a small area. But this was during the 70s. So even though we had various problems in our house, people really didn't get involved. Whatever was going on in your household, you just kind of dealt with it. And so I developed a lot of, pretty marked mental health issues when I was young. So I remember being, really, really depressed. I remember there was one summer in particular, I walked around in my pajamas for 2 weeks, didn't take a shower. And it was almost like I was invisible, no one noticed when these things were going on, because I always sort of described the dynamic so my father's from the rural South, and he's a very stoic person. So instead of getting therapy or getting mental health help, he crawled into a bottle and never got out. And I think a lot of my sort of experiences and opinions around 12-step programs and rehabs and sort of treatments are based around seeing him never get sober. He went to AA for 5 years, never got sober, had a sponsor, the whole thing. did a lot of, went to rehab, and he never stopped drinking his whole life. So, and eventually drinking killed him. He was spent the last couple years of his life in and out of nursing homes, eventually could not get out of the nursing home from medical conditions related to his drinking. And so I definitely knew I didn't want to do that thing. So of course I chose heroin, but that's a whole other set of things. I'm like half joking, but seriously, I did. I had this like really strong desire at a very early age to get outside of myself because I didn't like the person that I was. And I would say sort of like my first thing I really started fixing on was food. And that's something I struggle with today is, eating disorders. First I put on a bunch of weight because I was like compulsively eating. Like there's a lot to be said for the comfort that you can get from like a two-pound bag of chips and like a 2 liter of soda. Like you definitely can eat all of that and like sleep, and it gives you sort of like the same satiated feeling that you can get from drugs. And so that was sort of like my first experience really doing things and like spinning around in circles. I think, everyone sort of has like these experiences that they go through, spinning around in circles till you're dizzy and you fall down. And like, I got into cutting when I was, really young, which they didn't even call it cutting then, or self-harm. And just, trying to find any kind of serotonin, I guess, or dopamine or any kind of anything. And that was then preceded by my mother putting me in a wide variety of weight loss programs that probably would be considered to be abusive today, where, putting your child on starvation diet. So like my whole life from the age of like 10 forward has been patterns of disordered eating with like very brief sort of respites in between where I might feel good about myself. But, and I would say my problematic drug use really fed into my sort of self-image, because I was fed at a very, very early age that unless you were thin and perfect, there's something wrong with you. Like all these different things. Like, so I have this alcoholic father, and then I have this, eating disorders, and, being fat in the 80s when I was a kid, there was not very many fat kids. There was just not, and the weight loss diet industry is, brainwashed my mother into taking me, because really all I needed to do was like, not do Herbalife, not be starving, not be put on weight loss shakes, like all these different kinds of things, to eventually, by the time I was like 16 or 17, I was, throwing up and like doing other kind of things. And so I would lose 30 pounds and I would get all this like very, very distinct attention, and accolades from people like, oh, look good, how good you look. But then that would vacillate back to like, when I would gain the weight back, or I'd feel terrible about myself. So the great equalizer in all of that is drugs. So when, so I stayed away from that. I really got like into like fantasy and reading. Like right now I'm rewatching all the Lord of the Rings movies and like things where you can like take away yourself into a movie or a story or whatever. And then it was just kind of like, well, maybe I'll try doing drugs. And like my mom was in Al-Anon. For people who don't know what Al-Anon, and Al-Anon is like the companion to AA, where, the alcoholics go to AA and the people who are with those people go to Al-Anon. And so like my mom, she had this really like deep seated desire to try to fix my father's drinking. And in the meantime, like all these other things are going on where like all of her children have, various levels of substance abuse problems, all of us. And it was just sort of like insane, like the dynamic. And like, we also were not allowed to talk about the fact that my dad was an alcoholic, believe it or not. Like he would come home drunk and you were not allowed to like directly confront him about it. And so it was always like this weird dynamic, like, where shit is going on and you're not allowed to talk about it at any point. And I was looking back on it the other day. I was thinking like my entire adult life, I don't know that I've had more than probably 10 conversations with him about his drinking problems. You know, he's dead now, but I mean, it was just like this forbidden thing that you couldn't confront him about it. And that is not a healthy relationship at all. And that sort of like, so my patterns of relationships revolved around that, where like I had to be constantly pleasing another person, like doing things to help them, even if it's harmful to me. Like so now we're into like eating disorders, people pleasing, like doing things to change yourself to make another person love you. And that perfectly seamlessly fits into to drug addiction for me. So by the time drugs came around, I remember when I was 17, and this is not what made me an addict at all, but I had got my wisdom teeth pulled. And I just remember the way that it made me feel, like, you know, the constant conversation that was going on in my brain, like constant chaotic conversation, stopped for like a minute, you know, where I didn't have that constantly spinning around in my brain where I was like thinking about my weight or thinking about this person or why don't people like me or all this other kind of stuff. And that just shut off for a little while. And so I didn't use, you know, drugs right away, but I definitely remember bookmarking that feeling. Like I really like that. I really liked the way that it made me feel. And I didn't want to be a drinker because that's what my father was. I wanted to do something different. And so it was very apparent right away. So now we're up to where, you know, I got into punk rock music and like, you know, just all these like different things. But I just was constantly like trying to escape who I was as a person and like going to this different place. Like I've moved a zillion times. I've lived all over the country. I've like done everything I could to like get away from myself, except for like work on myself. And that, you know, was something that I didn't want to do for a long time. So I would honestly say that if it wasn't for opioids, I would have killed myself. Like I was in a place where I was just very suicidal. I had no mental health treatment until I was 27 years old. And I just, you know, opioids were it for me for a while. And smoking pot, like, and I noticed right away the difference between other people and the way that they drank and used and me and the way that they drank and drink. Like, I don't remember ever drinking for the taste of something. Like you see people, like I'll go places with people, you know, normie people or whatever they call them. I'll go places and I see the way that they drink, like they enjoy the taste of stuff. Like they want to know what the notes and the wine is and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't remember any of that shit. Like I want the effect. I don't care about what it tastes like. I just want that thing in that bottle to make me feel differently than how I feel. And like smoking pot, I remember, you know, my friends would like pass around a joint and they'd be fine. It's like, I want the whole bag. Like I want all of it. I want the whole thing. And like going into these like excessive places with everything where like people are having to walk me home because I'm so fucked up and like, you know, taking pills, you know, and I just remember the first time I did, you know, I was doing opioids a little bit, like, cause back then, now it's totally different, but you know, back then your parents or people you knew just had opioids laying around in medicine cabinets. Like they didn't finish them from her surgery. Like they gave my mom Valium for her nerves. Like, you know, they were just like pills were just laying around. So people would just take them like, fuck it, I'm just taking them. And so that whole thing of like going through someone's medicine cabinet, you'd find some 2-year-old Vicodins or Norcos or morphines or whatever. And so, you know, me and my friends would pool together our pills and we would take them. And one of my friends suggested, well, instead, you know, these pills, these T3s or whatever they are, aren't very strong. Why don't we try shooting them up? Which at the time shouldn't have really been a red flag. But I guess I just didn't care. Like in a lot of ways, I did that risk-taking center of my brain did not register like, oh, you shouldn't do these things. And like, while all of this is going on, this is like, you know, now we're like the middle of the AIDS crisis. There's no antiretrovirals. And so the first year that I was doing intravenous drugs, there was no, I mean, we had the same syringe, like there was no syringe exchange. Like me and my 4 friends, we all got hepatitis C. They didn't even call it hepatitis C then. It was hepatitis non-A, non-B. Like we all got hepatitis C from sharing the same needle. It was just brutal. Like it'd be like a fish hook coming out of your skin, and we still did it anyway. And like I had like, you know, friends that were getting into now I'm still in school, but like school is at the bottom of like my interests. I'm more interested in getting high. Like that's what I want to do. And so I started, you start pushing out people and gravitating more towards people who are getting high all the time. And so I had this little group of friends, and the two of the people were, you know, they were working as sex workers, male sex workers. And, you know, we would get together on the weekends and we would get high, and that's what we did. And they introduced me to more people. So now my circle is getting like whole new people where they don't have any jobs. Like all they do is get high. And so the first time I had to experience withdrawal, I didn't even know what it was. Like I thought that was all in your head. Like you take these pills and then you get sick for 4 days. Like I didn't believe it. I thought people just made it up until it happened to me. And I remember I was on the couch in my old apartment. I had like some couch that we pulled off the sidewalk out of the garbage because I lived in a college town. And like by this point, you would just like, people would move and you would just like take their furniture when they would leave at the end of the semester. And I had this apartment. I had like a mattress on the floor and a trash can and like a couch with the springs coming out of it. And I was laying on the couch, and I begged my friend to suffocate me because I was kicking so hard. And he was like, "Bitch, you're just kicking. You'll be fine." I was like, "What is kicking?" And he was like, "You're going to withdrawals." And I was like, "No, I'm not. That shit's in your head." He was like, "Bitch, look at you. Look at the state that you're in. Like, no, this is real." And he was like, "And you'll be fine in 4 or 5 days." And that same person, I remember like a few weeks after that, that was the first person that I had to help stay alive through an overdose. Like now I'm up to like people are overdosing around me, and you know, things are happening. But I don't see it as a problem. Like I have a job and I'm going to school, even though I'm not actually going to school. I'm like going just for the test, but I don't see that I have a problem. You know, I don't think that I have a problem, but now it's sort of creeping up on me. Like, you have a like there's a problem here. And it just was insane. You know, it was just so strange how quickly I just descended into just IV drug use. And like, then I came out to California on spring break in 1992, and I never left. Like I came out here because even though now I'm using heroin, I didn't have access to it. Like, it's not in any way like it is today where you can just, it's easier. It'd probably be, you know, if I went down 15 minutes from my house, I could get 7 or 8 kinds of drugs in 10 minutes. You know, it was different then. Like I had to drive, my friends would drive to the next city up to get this stuff. And so once I had access to it, it was just, you know, that was it. That was my life. And I mean, I wish I could come up with like good reasons why I used, but I think I used because the drugs felt really good at the beginning. You know, there's a lot to be said for like how good drugs feel, but then the way that I was living in combination with the drugs, like I was homeless, like homeless on the street, homeless, you know, living in and out of Roach Hotel, homeless, very quickly. And I had thought once I had reached a different point, like there's no going back from this. Like, it's not like I can just go back to this normal life. How, after you've been, shooting up between your toes, are you supposed to go back to a normal life? Like, how do I, change the trajectory that I'm on, where now I'm doing sex work? Like, now I'm doing all the forbidden type of things in society. And this is a very conservative. Now we're going from the Reagan era. Now we're on Bush 1 era. Like, this is a very conservative era where they said, you know, junkies should die. Like, AIDS is their, cosmic retribution for the way that you're living. And that's what I'm doing. I'm out injecting drugs. And like, I had a lot of friends during that period of time, die of, they would contract AIDS and they would be dead within 2 years. It was mind blowing. And so that made it even where I wanted to use even more. Like, I don't want to think about any of the things that are going on in my life, I just want to get high. That's all I want to do. And after about 6 months, so then I would then started the me trying to stop. So the first time I really tried to stop, I went to live on the side of a mountain in Paonia, Colorado, at the Rainbow Gathering, which is like where all the hippies get together and hold hands on 4th of July, and everyone takes acid. So I'm in the national park kicking heroin. First of all, me and my friend we're going to hitchhike there. So we got to one part of Colorado. It turned out we were in the wrong part of Colorado. We didn't bring a tent. We didn't realize it snowed July 1st when we were there. Like it was freezing cold. We're on the side of a mountain. I'm kicking heroin. I don't have any food. I have no money. I have nothing but a sleeping bag. And these hippies, and I guess there's a lot, I didn't realize at the time, there's a lot of like drug manufacturers that go to those things. Like a lot of people who have a lot of resources go, and then there's like a mixture of like townie people who are just there to try to buy acid and whatever. But like I'm there trying to kick drugs, on the side of a mountain, and I was making pancakes. I remember they're giving me doses, and I'm like, the pancakes are moving. Like I'm out of my mind on acid. Like they just kept feeding me acid like it was, just like the water. And so finally at a certain point I was like, I've got to get the fuck out of here too. Like this is not working either. Like I've been here for 3 weeks. I'm covered in filth. It actually took me two baths and showers to get all the dirt off of me. I mean, I'm encrusted in dirt from living on the side of this mountain, digging a hole to use the bathroom, like the whole thing that you do. So me and my friend, we begged someone who was leaving, like, can you bring us back to California? And right away, I was within 2 or 3 days, I was using again after I detoxed, and I was like, fuck, this is not working. Like I thought I had a handle on this to a certain extent, but now it has a handle on me. And that's when I just went full off into there was like a period where I got really into sex work. I got in this relationship with this guy who was also a sex worker, and like he was like my running partner. And then at a certain point, like 6 months later, he and I were like, we are going to try to stop everything. We're going to try to stop heroin, period. And so we found, treatment back then was they would scream at you. So there was 2 kinds of treatment. There's like religious treatment, like the Salvation Army, where you go and they pray the devil out of you or whatever to stop using. And then there was like attack therapy, which is based on a program called Synanon, where they would yell at you and they would tell you what a piece of shit you were. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I already know what a piece of shit I am. I'm not going to let people yell at me in some circle. So we pulled a little piece of paper off of a pole for methadone. Do you want to try to stop? So we went to the methadone clinic. And, back then methadone detoxes were only 21 days, and you had to go through multiple detoxes before you could get on maintenance. They wouldn't put you on maintenance right away. And so I stopped using heroin, but I started using other things. So then we embark on the meth years. And so then I went into meth. So eventually I'm spiraling back and forth. Like I'm going meth, heroin. Eventually was meth, heroin, coke all at one time, in the same syringe actually. But like I was in this abusive relationship for a while, and like things are, I'm homeless. I'm like eating out of trash cans, just like homeless, and just getting lice, and just all these terrible things are happening. And finally, at a certain point, I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to my parents' house. I'm going to get my shit together. This is like, now we're in the mid-90s. I'm going to go home. I'm going to get my shit together. This is my last chance to get my shit together. And so I was supposed to go to my brother's wedding. Well, I was like 2 days late to my brother's wedding. I show up, I do a big hit of speed before I get on the airplane. So I walked from downtown Cincinnati to the end of downtown Cincinnati. Where if you know how long that is, it's like a 2-hour walk. Like I just walked, and I caught the bus, then I hitchhiked. I get out to my parents' house. My parents' house is in the middle of nowhere. I get there, there's the fucking shadow people at my parents' house. Nobody's home. It's completely dark. I'm in the middle of nowhere. But it turns out it's not the shadow people. My mom had a cardboard cutout of Travis Tritt and the achy breaky heart. And so he was there in the shadows. And he actually, like, it actually was a literal cutout of him, a full-size live cutout. So I think I'm talking to the shadow people, but it's actually Travis Tritt. So in the morning, so I can't be there with the shadow people at Travis Tritt. So then I walk. I mean, I walked 45 minutes to go get a Dr. Pepper. Like, she'd left me a couple bucks or something like that. And I get back. So finally I go to sleep, and I was just like, it was, and then my mom shows up like a couple days later, and she right away, she could tell something was wrong with me. She was like, what the fuck is going on? And she brought me like a plate of food, and I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, I'm a bisexual junkie prostitute in San Francisco, and if you can't accept me, I'm going to jump the first freight train back to San Francisco. And she said, well, I think you need some rest. And she just shut the door. Like, you have to picture my conservative mom with her beehive haircut. She's like, she's like suffered so much with my dad, and she just shuts the door. I don't hear from her for a little while. I guess she has to go ruminate on this. But right away, I go to the city, and I end up getting back together with the people that I had been using with before. And so I ended up coming back to California. And so that was just, after that was just jails, drugs, out. So I think it's important to bring up all this kind of stuff, because I had no direction, like no one helping me, no direction, like my mother was the only person. And at this point, I cut her off. Like, I didn't want to have any interaction with her for a while, because I was like, if I'm going to pull myself down, I don't want to pull anybody else with me. I just want to sink to the bottom like stone and just be alone. And I don't want to pull other people into it. And so she later told me, I'd rather you just contact me no matter what. No matter what's going on with you, I'd rather you just contact me. And so later on, she ended up sending me money and like trying to help me and stuff like that. But she knew, like, people watch the movie Black Tar Heroin, or they read my book, and they're like, oh, she didn't know. But she knew, like, she took me to get an AIDS test when I was in Cincinnati. Like, she knew for sure what my problems were. Like, I had syringe marks all up and down my arms. Like, she knew. She just didn't want to deal with it, because she was afraid she would cut me off, and she would never have contact with me again. Because at a certain point, I had no contact with her for like almost a year. I think I might have called her like once or twice, and she already had been through this with another one of her kids, so she didn't want to deal with that. So finally, I'm trying. So then there's a series of like me trying to kick by myself. Like, I remember one time in particular, I said, I'm going to quit doing heroin. I'm laying on the sidewalk trying to kick heroin while I'm homeless, puking off the side of a curb, like seriously trying to quit. I was like, I have got to quit this shit. I've got to get off of this stuff. But there was just so limited help back then, and so limited help now on it too. Really, honestly, there's such limited help. The only place that I knew you could go to get into any kind of treatment was jail. Like, in jail, they maybe might send you. I remember at the time, I ended up getting sent to treatment through the jail, but I was one of 2 people that week that they sent, out of 1,000 something people. Like, I was one of 2 that they sent. Like, there is very limited the amount of treatment slots. So it was almost like hitting the lottery. And so I was just desperate. So now the fun is over. All the fun parts are done. Now it's all the abscesses and sickness and, cotton fevers and all just bad stuff. There was no, like, periodically I would get some relief, but really not. But I was just like, how do I even, I remember there's one night in particular, I remember I was underneath the street light. I'm homeless. Like, I have a shopping cart with all my belongings with it. And I was thinking, I really want to try to get my life together and like go back to school. but how do you even elevate yourself from this particular, I mean, it just seems so far-fetched. Like, I'm just going to die with a needle in my arm. And so I had let them, start filming me for this movie, Black Tar Heroin, because I thought I was going to die. Like, there was no other reason that I let them do it. I was like, I want to let people see what my life is like, because I just, haphazardly started using these drugs and didn't really think much about it. And I want people to understand like what my life is like. So I let them start following me around, and they told me at a certain point, there's just one scene in Black Tar Heroin. They say they gave me some money to do laundry, because they said, all you do is shoot drugs. Like, all you do is use drugs. We need to get you film footage of you doing something else, because that's all you do. And it's like, that's literally all I did. As a matter of fact, my last boyfriend in my addiction, he left me because, I would have like a 10-pack, there'd be blood everywhere. I'd just be sitting there for hours trying to get a vein. And he's like, there's no life here. There's not a life. Like, we're not doing anything. There's no relationship. It's you and drugs, and that's it. That's all there is. And that's all there was. And so it wasn't hard for me. I think it's everybody's like circumstances are different, but for me, it was not hard to imagine quitting, because there was nothing good left. There was the alternative was what? Dying. I mean, there was nothing left in it. And so, and I don't believe in that whole concept of like rock bottom. Like, the bottom for me was actually 2 years before I had quit using. That was when I was in this abusive relationship, and I'm really, really homeless. Like, that was the worst part of my life. The end of my life, my end of my using career, like, I'm selling drugs. I have all the drugs I want, but I'm still not happy. Nothing is clicking for me. I'm still not happy. So, and the people from the needle exchange probably kept me alive, honestly. I mean, they would tell me like, there's other things you can do with your life. I used to use drugs and I stopped. Like, the woman who ran the one exchange I used to go to, her partner had died of an overdose. And she would tell me like, there's other things for you to do. And so I had made this decision. I said, when they arrest me, I'm either going to go on methadone for the rest of my life, I was fine with that. I was like, either I'm going to try this, the abstinence-based recovery, or I'm going to go on methadone for the rest of my life. And I'm going to be okay with that. Like, that's just what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be okay with that. But I'm going to give this one chance. And that's, that was 23 years ago, like over 23 years ago, where they sent me to the worst rehab. I mean, I can't even describe. The rehab I went to had good people in it, but it was rotten to the core. Like, they tried, but it was all people from prison. And so there's pimps, people selling drugs. They used to bring the drug sniffing dogs in. People were fucking on the back stairs. A lot of them were just there to do their time. I mean, that's one of the problems with mandated treatment, is not everybody is there to try to get better. So I tried to get together. There was a little group of us. We really were like, we have to get our shit together, because we don't want to go back to living on the street. And I think all of us have been, sober this entire time, just because we were we were like desperate, because people would stand up in these meetings and they would talk about, all these drugs they sold and stuff like that. And it's like, bitch, I saw you. I was homeless. You're homeless. I saw what you're doing. Like, why are you lying in the rehab? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why can't you be on? I right away, I said, I don't care what these people think about me. Like, for the first time in my life, I did not care. Like, I was like, I'm probably not going to see 90% of them again. So I'm going to get all of this out, all the things I did. And that's like, people were like, how is it that you're so open about everything? Because I set that precedent for myself. I'd rather be open than be confronted about lies. I'd rather just be open about it. It's just easier for me to navigate life as this person who's open. And I find there's a certain healing in that. But people would tell me like, and honestly, if you would have picked like, who in this treatment facility is going to make it, no one would have bet money on me. Like, absolutely nobody, except for my one counselor that I had. He has since relapsed and died. And that was really hard for me, because it's like, how does your mentor relapse and die? Like, you believe in me, but you can't even believe in yourself. Like, what does that say about sort of my life and but also your life? Like, So it was, the early stages, I would say I was terrified to use. I was absolutely terrified. I was afraid. I don't know what I thought. Like needles were going to fall from the sky into my arm. Like if I did anything different, like I had this whole very, very rigid routine for myself of like things I would do. And I had these flashcards. I took this class. It was like positive affirmations. And I would sit there at my first little job doing market research and I would read these. I enjoy my clean and sober lifestyle. I was like brainwashing myself or something like that. Like I really had to get something new in there because it was a struggle, and I will say that, a craving is just a thought, right? You have a zillion thoughts. Like right now I'm thinking about how the cat's over there and I have my bottle of water and my son's talking outside, like all these other kinds of things. But in the early stages, there's like a physiological part to it where you start having a craving and your stomach gets upset and stuff like that. In the early phases, it's hard to ignore that. Like you're struggling to try to get by and you're having these physiological cravings because you can't do something 24/7 for 10 years and then to stop and just forget about it. Like, oh, I'm just going to not do this now. It's like, but that's all you did, like you dream about it, you think about it, smells remind you, places remind you. And when I got out of rehab, I was in a sober living, which is exactly where I used to use. So it was like literally I would walk out of my sober living place and there's the exact same people doing the exact same shit. The guy that I used to sell drugs for was like, you want to go back to work, and I had to make some really like rapid decisions about how I was going to handle myself in the world. And so I spent a lot of time in the early phases just kind of like by myself watching true crime dramas and just sitting there thinking about what am I going to do with my life. And, it's interesting because in the sober living facility I was in the top drawer of the dresser, because they gave you you came in, there was like a bed and something. And the top dresser drawer was the guy's 4-step who had been in the room because he had relapsed and left. And like his shit was still there. And I left that there for years because I never took it out. Not because I thought he would come back and get it, because it reminded me of like how if you make the wrong decision, your life can change like that. Like just, and so I started working in overdose prevention in 1999 because a friend of mine who I was close to, my ex-girlfriend, a friend of mine and my ex-girlfriend had died of overdoses. And I started thinking like, maybe there's something that I can try to do to make a difference. I think for me, a lot of overcoming the things I've been through in my life has come through volunteering and being of service to others and trying to help other people. Because if I just sit and dwelled on all the things that have happened to me, I would never get out of bed. Like I would just never get out of bed because, you would think the world is like this awful, terrible place. I used to work with girls that were 12 to 17 that were abused. I had to quit that job because I would just dwell on the world. I would think, how fucked up is the world that these things have happened to these kids, and things that happened to me in my life. And so I just had to do jobs where I was helping other people and being of service to people. And it's really helped me a lot. And so my whole frame about harm reduction really changed, I'd say, when I was like maybe 18 months into this journey, where I started to see like, maybe it's not my fucking business to tell people that they need to be sober. Like maybe people need to have their own shit. And it's not my job to like police whether people smoke weed or they're on methadone or whatever. Like I'm not helping them. I'm just being an asshole. Like it's not helpful to people to tell people what you think is better in the way that they live their life. It's just not, and I learned the ultimate sort of lesson. So I had a friend of mine, Jake, who was in the movie with me, and, he was going to this NA meeting out in Berkeley, and like the people were telling him he needed to get off methadone. And I ran into him and I was like, he's working as a volunteer. He's got a girlfriend, like he's doing real good. He's got a place to live. And people were telling him that he needed to get off methadone, and he got out. And I was like, why are they telling you that? And he, because you're doing the best you've ever done in his life. And then he relapsed and he died, and he was dead in the room for 3 or 4 days. And the people from NA kicked in the door, and I went to his funeral, and it was like, I felt like saying, which one of you is the one that told him this shit? Like, which one of you is the one that convinced him, because he was very vulnerable, that what he was doing wasn't okay. And so he died as a consequence of that. And I was very fucking pissed off. I ended up working at the place where that used to be his clinic, because it was a free clinic, because I just felt like something, working as abstinence treatment is great, but that's not it. It's not it for everybody. It's just really not fucking it at all. And so then I got really, really involved in harm reduction. And, I got in a relationship with my husband. We've been together a long time. I had to do the exact opposite of everything I had ever done with relationships. Like, to me, if they hadn't got out of prison or had been in prison for murder, or, it's like, that's all I dated. Like, was just like dudes with tattoos on their neck. Like, I'd find out who they were later, basically. Like, oh, so tell me about that time you were in prison for manslaughter. Like, I didn't know. Like, I just go based on like their thing that they had. And, I was telling somebody about, there was a few different times I moved from my place where I was living and left them there because I couldn't get rid of them. Like, I couldn't get rid of these guys that I would hook up with. Like, I've got to move. You can have you can have this room, and eventually they'll kick him out because he can't pay the rent. And I got to go. Like, I can't be here. And like, and that was my pattern. Like, then there was another period of time where I was like by myself for a long time. So in the early phase, I had to just like be by myself and figure out what it is that I wanted from a relationship, but it was not having somebody beat my ass anymore. Like, I'm done with that. I'm not having any of that kind of shit, any kind of red flags. I'm not dealing with that. And so everything started to change. Like, and I didn't give, and it's like, whether I'm fat or skinny or whether I'm this or that, like, I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be treated with respect. I deserve to have good things in my life. And I had to like slowly accumulate them. And also part of that was my mother and I had this weird codependent relationship. I don't even really believe in codependency, but like, we had this weird sort of like relationship where she was always trying to rescue me or help me in a certain way. I told her, I just have to do this alone. Like, I don't want you to try to help me. I just want to try to do it by myself, because it wouldn't have been like me doing it. It would have been like her, like, pushing me. And I didn't want those strings attached to like that negativity. So as an adult, I just did it all myself. Like, I'm absolutely self-made to a certain extent, but a lot of social agencies helped me. A lot of places helped me. That myth of like the self-made person, it's like, no, I had like subsidized housing, victim services. I was a victim of violent crime. They helped me. I had a therapist that helped me. I had, I was in free counseling for outpatient to deal with like trauma, things that happened to me when I was a sex worker. Like, there were places that were, this county paid for my treatment bed. Like, I went to school through an ex-offenders program and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and they helped me. Like, a lot of resources were invested in like trying to help me. And so that was a wonderful thing that I was able to do that. And I think so many people, where they stumble is they don't get tapped into those resources, or they don't know where to find them, and they get kicked to the curb or left in the side lane. And so then I started giving back and wanting to try to, help other people. Like, even now I make stupid TikToks as sort of like my therapy in a certain way. I like make these dumb TikToks. Some of them are funny, but a lot of them are like, this is how you can go back to school. This is how you can get services through Voc Rehab. Like, this is the story of Eileen Wuornos. I'd really like to know like how sex workers actually feel about her and like her experience, because I experienced similar things where men had tried to kill me, like all these different kinds of things. But like, most of my life now today is like, I got to make my kids lunch soon. Like, I got 3 kids. My house is a mess right now. My husband swept, thankfully. I got the pets to feed and the cats. It's like this really like, I was going to say mundane, but it's like this quiet life. But, you can only have a quiet life if you feel safe. And I was thinking earlier, the first time I actually felt safe in my entire life was probably in my late 30s. Like, I was always worried about whether, my dad was going to be violent, or the guy that I was going to be with was violent, or whether, this, some terrible upheaval was going to happen, or somebody was going to overdose. But for the first time in my life, like, I can go to bed and feel safe, like, and you can thrive in that environment where you feel safe and secure. And I think that is sort of the core of harm reduction, is people feeling valued, loved, and safe. And so I consider my abstinence to be sort of an extension of that. So I am abstinent. I have taken pain meds when they cut me open for C-sections and I had a miscarriage. They gave me pain meds, and I had to tell them they had given me, this is before they cut everybody off the pain meds, but they tried to send me home with all these pain meds after I had a miscarriage. And I was like, I feel like killing myself, and you're giving me the means to do so with all these meds. Like, you need to take these back, and I'll take like 5 and we'll see how it goes from there. But giving me a bag of 30 pills is not going to work for me. Like, being an advocate for myself, where they're telling me they're going to put a central line in my neck for me to deliver a baby. How am I going to push a baby out with a line in my neck? Like, you've got to get another anesthesiologist in here and try to find a vein, like, and all the different things that you go through, like being a person who is upfront with like my experiences and saying, I'm not going to accept less. Like, I need you to, these are the things I need from you. Where before, I would let them stick me, 50 times trying to get a vein when I knew that they wouldn't be able to get one. Now it's like, here's where you need to go and like deal with that. And like, and I tell them right up front, like, I used to be an IV drug user. This is not going to work. I'd leave those places crying, like, and I had to have my teeth redone. I had to do all these things. So I guess today, like, my main struggles are still around food and not so much self-acceptance. Just, I like to fucking eat, I like to eat, and it's not even so much that I eat unhealthy shit. It's just, I've been on diets for so long. Your whole thing is just out of whack. So there's that. And, and then I had last year, what was it? The beginning, right before the pandemic started, I started reading all the news about the pandemic, and I ended up having panic attacks and had to go to the hospital, and they put me on an anti-anxiety med. And I when I first started going to 12-step meetings, they used to say people who were on psych meds were not sober. And so I had a lot of internal stigma around getting on medication. And then I just had to say, fuck this shit. I need to be on some kind of medication. And it's really improved my life so much. I mean, I don't need to fall apart to be a martyr for 12-step. Like, I need help. I need this. And so I'm on a very low dose, but still, I take it and it's fine. It's like, okay, cool. Like, and sometimes I take my fucking medicine. It's like, I had to cut back coffee, which is like so depressing, because panic attacks, like, damn, I can't have any joy left in my life. But, I have a little bit of coffee in the morning, but it's changed. Everything's changed. So I guess if there's nothing else you can get from my story, it's that you can change. And now I'm 51. Now I'm like, how much time do I have left on this earth? Like, I don't want to work all the time. I want to chill. I don't want to fucking, I used to work. I worked through so many things and like miss things with my kids because I got to work. It's like, I'm not doing any of that shit. Like, I want to enjoy my life, whatever time I have left, whether it's, 10 years or 5 years or 20 years. Like, I want to try to enjoy my life and do the things that I want to do, where before my life was so focused on what other people wanted me to do. It's like, I think there's a certain freedom in like not giving a fuck anymore, like, and just wanting to be free, like just and helping people. Like, I'm not invested in capitalism. I'm invested in like trying to be a good person and like other types of pursuits. I like to watch birds and, watch whales and like do other types of things in my life. So that's pretty much it. I don't want to speak for an hour and 20 minutes because I feel like I get sick of hearing myself talk, but I wanted to spend a good chunk of time, talking about sort of what builds up to the person I am today, because, I don't really talk about, now that my parents are dead, I'm more likely to talk about it. But when my parents were alive, I was so worried about like saying things that would get back to them and like hurt their feelings and stuff like that. But just now unraveling of like my experience with what happened with them is my experience, and I'm entitled to my experience. And like, I don't need to constantly hide things to protect other people. anymore. Like, I'm entitled to have, like, to say these things. And so, but now I'm to the point where in my life where, for a lot of ways I'm free. So now I'm just like, just trying to chill and not be too anxious all the time. And like, I'm going to spend a lot of my weekend watching the Lord of the Rings. I watch that like once a year because it makes me, it's like when you watch the same thing, they say when you watch the same thing over again, it's like a form of self-soothing. So that's just what I'm doing today. So thanks for letting me come in and share today. Bye. Bye. Let me put myself on mute.
Take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, well I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. 'Cause I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be good so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. I wanna take a ride up in the sky and watch those aeroplanes just pass me by. I wanna see a Lear jetliner take a dive to show all of these people what it means to be alive. 'Cause I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be good so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire is all I ever had. And my shadow is getting smaller and smaller, and I know where I stand. My shadow is getting smaller and smaller, and I know where I stand. Wonder would they pay me any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it climbs. 'Cause peace and love are very bad, they're hard to find. I wanna be good so bad.